Hey everybody, today I wanted to talk about just some typical strategies for athletes when it comes to food. And today I'm going to focus on the overweight endurance athlete who they wanted to get more healthy, they want to get doing more things so that they can lose weight. And there's a lot of information out there that really it's not for the overweight endurance athlete who wants to lose weight, who wants to get into better health. Because what we see when we read all these articles in different magazines or on the internet is it's all like clinical studies that have been around, like elite athletes, but it's nothing really geared towards the overweight athlete. Now, when I was overweight and first signing up, I read just so much stuff out there of you got to have this much carbohydrate per hour. You needed to, and if you look at the directions on those goo packets that you see at almost every aid station of any type of run, it's have one every 45 minutes. It's making sure you're carb loading. It's making sure it's this. You're getting this many carbs. It's carbs, carbs, carbs. Then you get across the finish line. And in some cases, in some races, you get a beer. You just accomplish this big feat, have a beer. Awesome. But then you start looking at the food choices at those events. It's, in some cases, it's muffins, pizza, bananas, fruit, not a really whole bunch of healthy choices. And some of that's just because of sponsors. Sugar sells, sponsors know that. And that leads into the culture aspect of, hey, I just got done doing this big race, or I just got done burning 3,000, 4,000 calories, so I get to go eat whatever I want. And the fact of the matter is, you really can't. As I stated when we started this video is geared towards those who got into these endurance activities to lose weight. So how do we approach that? Number one is we have to restrict our carbohydrates, because the general response that I've got, and I had this too, is, I've got all this fat on my body. I want to use it. So how does it play out? If you're taking in carbohydrates, your body's going to prefer to burn those instead of fat, because carbohydrates provide a much quicker energy return. So if we're running a marathon and our training is kind of at that sub level where we're going slow and our heart rate is still low, then we're not going to use that carbohydrate for the most part. We're going to use very small amounts of what we're taking in, and what happens is that extra carbohydrates, our body's not going to be able to use it, so it's going to get converted over to fat, and all of a sudden we're storing fat instead of burning fat. So I'm going to skip a lot of the science stuff and not go into how, when you eat carbohydrates, your body releases insulin, which is a protagonist to glucagon and so forth. I want to keep this video very simple. So the way that we as overweight athletes can get our body to burn more fat is to, number one, restrict the carbohydrates that we're eating through the day, because when we restrict carbohydrates, our body is forced to start creating something called a ketone, which comes from our fat. So now we're starting to burn fat all day long. So you might have a question, well, if I cut the carbs, where am I going to get my calories? And that's very simple. Our calories come from fat. 1 gram of fat provides 9 calories versus 1 gram of carbohydrate producing 4 calories. So we get more calories from fat. So we need to be burning as much fat as possible. And surprisingly, just our body doing what it does, keeping us alive, just burns a whole lot of energy. So the more that we can reduce those carbohydrates, because we're not doing anything very high intensity for extended periods of time, because had we been very active, we wouldn't be overweight to begin with. I know that was my case. I sit at a desk all day. I still sit at a desk all day. So my energy use just really isn't that high. So from the day to day, now that you've reduced all those carbohydrates, you started to incorporate all those healthy fats, avocados, macadamia nuts, pecans, coconut oil when you're cooking your foods, olive oil. Those are all healthy fats. Now that you've incorporated that, you should have a whole lot more energy over time. Now, granted, that first week might be a little rough. You might go through what's called the keto flu. And really what it is it's your brain switching over from the sugar to ketone bodies. And that's all for another video. Just keeping things pretty simple so that everybody can follow along. So now during the day you've done that. You're starting to feel good. Your body, or actually we'll just say you get to your workout time. In this case is an afternoon person. So let's say I've got to go work out at 6 o'clock. It's a 1 hour workout and I'm doing some interval sprints. Our body has enough stored energy in the form of glycogen stored in our muscles to get us through that entire hour-long workout of intervals. Because when you're doing intervals, you have your work period and you have your rest period. So your work period, you're probably only going to be able to maintain that intensity for a period of time before your body just needs to start replenishing what it burnt at the muscular level. So during that rest period, your body switches over to burning more fat to get that precious ATP back into the muscle so that you can do it again. And it's a kind of vicious cycle. But once you stop doing that exercise, your body goes right back to burning fat, and it works super hard to get all that ATP back into the muscle. You've probably heard of like the afterburn effect or the EPOC, and all that is it's post-exercise oxygen consumption of your body working feverishly to restore the stored ATP in your muscles. So now that your workout's done, if you go out and you have a beer, or you go out, you have a slice of pizza, or do what's called the carbohydrate replenishment, what you've essentially done is you have just shot yourself in the foot of burning fat. Because now that you've taken in that carbohydrate, your body starts to use that to replenish itself instead of the fat. I know we're running at 8 minutes. It's going a little long, but I think this is a good start. So over time, your body's going to adapt to burning more fat for fuel. So what about the long workouts? Now your long running workouts, we'll say 2 hours because you're training for a marathon or a half marathon. You've got a long run. Since that's what we're using, a runner, is when you look at that run workout, most of the time they're at zone 2 or at a very easy pace. Now at this pace, your body predominantly wants to burn 65% of its energy from fat. I'm not going to get into the offshoots of how your diet can shift that crossover point, because that's for something totally different, and I'm trying to keep it simple. So I know there might be some people watching the video and go, well, no, because of this, because of this, because of this. And you know what? That's on a totally different tangent. So at that intensity, for the most part, your body is predominantly going to be burning fat throughout the entire exercise. So if you're predominantly burning fat, you don't need to be taking in a whole lot of carbohydrates. So you don't need that goo every 45 minutes because you're going to overdo it on sugar. And there's products out there like Generation UCAN, Vespa Power. There's a new one, Nourish, Balance, and Thrive, I think it is, which is another slow digested starch that provides you a slow amount of carbohydrate over time so you're not overdoing it. So that's just one of the strategies if you're an overweight athlete and you're looking to endurance sports for fat loss, then we need to cut out those carbs, because all we're doing is shooting ourselves in the foot.